Thanks so much for joining us today. We're excited to be hosting another webinar with two really knowledgeable folks in our field, Teresa and Victoria, and we'll give them a chance to introduce themselves here in a second. But first, we always like to share a little bit about Chop Local and what we're about. So Chop Local is an online farmers market specifically for meat. And so if you are interested in developing an online store for your small farm or locker butcher shop, we'd love to be able to help you with that. If you're interested in this, we encourage you to visit our website for farmers and those that are interested in selling at sell.choplocal.com and fill out our vendor inquiry form, and we'll go ahead and get in contact with you and talk to you about what it's like to be a vendor on Chop Local. In addition to that, we also encourage you to sign up for our emails at sell.choplocal.com. And if you haven't been able to view some of our previous webinars, you can find the recordings for those as well on our website. So encourage you to check that out and always reach out if you have any questions. But with that, we kind of want to get right into it and introduce you to our two speakers. And I'm actually going to let them talk a little bit about themselves and their experience with farmers markets and the knowledge that they have in that area. So first off, we'll let Victoria go ahead and introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she knows about farmers markets.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Sydney. So my name is Victoria. Thanks for having me today. I come from the on-farm market and agritourism side of the world. Of course, starting out, we did farmers markets and things like that as well. So in the beginning, I was with this farm for about 8 years. And I say that past tense because I've since separated from the operation and now am a coach for small farms that sell direct to consumer. So same niche, just a little bit of a different role. But the farm operation was very heavy on getting people to the farm. When we first started out, I was, 2 years out of high school. So farmers markets were our go-to. And we started that way because we didn't really have a storefront, didn't have a place. So we did the weekend traveling, the setup, the tear down, the whole 9 yards. And then we eventually transitioned and realized that, we wanted a home base. We wanted a brick and mortar. So our farm was a 2-car garage that we turned into a storefront, and it just over the years grew and grew and grew. So eventually we transitioned from farmers markets and that environment to being on farm, which is super cool and comes with a whole nother realm of things. But farmers market really is our core. So 8 years of doing that, and now I'm in the space, still connected with small farms, still in ag, just as a coach to help other people, other farmers with their marketing and kind of everything farm to consumer, because it is so niche.
Awesome. And Teresa, share a little bit about yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really fun to see my old farmer's market tent right there. So my name is Teresa Davis. Thank you so much for having me. I own West 40 Market in Ankeny, Iowa. And I have a little bit of a different background as well, kind of like Victoria. Some of it might have been just accidental for both of us, the way we stumbled into things. But I grew up on a farm, my parents' farm, and it was just a hobby farm at the time. And so when I graduated from high school, I came down to Des Moines, and I just slowly started to kind of get into sharing it with my friends, all of that, and decided in about 2015 to do the Des Moines Farmers Market. So that was kind of my intro to farmers markets. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing. But I did that for going on 5 seasons before the pandemic hit. And so I would sell all of our individual cuts of beef there specifically. So just a small little stand like you see there in that picture. And then the entire time I was working a corporate job. So this was not my full-time job by any means. It was just kind of a little side hustle on the weekends to hopefully build into what I'm actually doing now. So pandemic hit, and I unfortunately got laid off from or maybe fortunately got laid off from my corporate job. And decided that it was just kind of my push out the door to start something else. And so I built or started a actual brick and mortar shop where people can come in and they can shop individual cuts of meat. So I've got beef, pork, chicken, bison, lamb, turkey. It's all raised in Iowa. depending on the time of year, support between 5 and 7 Iowa farmers here in our store. And then we have over a dozen other local businesses in Iowa that we support with honeys and jams and sauces and rubs and all sorts of other things that we carry here, even produce in the summertime. And so for me, like I said, I had a 16-year corporate job and just kind of did the farmers market on the side, but learned a lot and learned a lot to be able to kind of transition into an actual retail storefront, which is what I'm doing now. So I have a lot of passion with the farmers markets because it's obviously how I got started. And then I also still do farmers markets. So we have some events this summer that we're going to be part of. And then we do the Ankeny Farmers Market as well, where we have a booth every Saturday. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much for joining us. I know you both have a lot of collective experiences that'll really provide a lot of great ideas for our participants here today. So with that, we'll kind of get into the Q&A portion of today's webinar. I know with Q&As, we can kind of, sometimes veer in a different direction. So if that happens, I think we're all completely good with that. So feel free to just put your questions in the chat and we'll kind of lead this in whatever direction is most beneficial to the participants. So the first question here, Teresa, we'll kind of start with you. So you sold frozen meat at the farmer's market kind of by yourself. And you did the setup and tear down just with a team of one, really. So can you share more about how you managed that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did. Yeah, it was just me. I get everything prepared on Friday nights. I have a little, like a ProMaster van. I should have sent you guys a picture maybe to pop up there, but it's actually got a little Tommy gate on the back. A lift basically is what it is. And so I would fill my chest freezer full and I had somebody put wheels on the bottom of it for me that were welded in really, really good. So it could constantly be moving with hundreds of pounds of meat inside. And I literally just rolled that thing right up and put it in the van, would secure it in there, and everything else that you saw there in that previous picture would go into that van. So I'd load up at about 4:30, 4:45 every Saturday morning, head down to the market and unload, set up. Obviously it took a couple of times to kind of really get the hang of things, but I tried to simplify stuff as much as possible. So all the meat was in, the freezer, and I didn't have multiple different coolers. I tried to have just my setup be very simple and to the point of what I was trying to get across. And that helped me just be able to do it all on my own as well too. So, yeah, that's kind of how I did it. I feel like I'm still tired after all those years ago. But it's a lot of work. I see some setups now. Sorry to cut you off. I see some setups now that have like multiple coolers and even like those pull behind trailers, like those more industrial, I don't know, like a glorified almost wagon basically, that people use to kind of pull those. And that works just great too. But I felt like the freezer was wonderful because I was able to also plug that in. So at the Des Moines Farmers Market, I had a cute little generator that was pretty quiet, that sat behind me that I plugged the deep freeze into. The current market that I'm at has an actual electrical outlet for me to use, which is great. So that actually stays plugged in the entire time, and keeps everything nice and cold, especially in the hot summer days. And then I can serve it out of there or get it out of there for the customer to take with them.
Yeah, perfect. And if you didn't catch this on the last slide, here was Victoria's setup, and you can also see her little freezer up here. So it is kind of nice that your customers could see in the freezer. So yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
That little guy was an actual cooler, a reach in and grab and go cooler that I had set up for customers. It just had like 3 or 4 shelves on it. So all the main items, are really popular items, I would put in there, like the steaks and the ground beef, because it would get really, really busy sometimes. And so a lot of customers, especially once they became regulars, really liked the option of just let me grab what I need and I'll stand in line then and wait to check out. But then they didn't have to wait for me to pull out of the freezer what they wanted and stuff like that too. So that was really helpful too. And that was kind of a later on down the line when I got that little refrigerator, but that was really helpful to have that.
Awesome.
Teresa, did you find that you would sell more products of what people could see in the glass?
Yep. Yeah, I did. And I actually went to, in the summertime, and I still do it here at my store, I vacuum seal all the steaks. I don't usually do it year round because it's expensive. But I would vacuum seal all the steaks so that they could actually see the cuts that they were getting. And yes, absolutely. So like I said, when I would make sure all the really popular cuts, most of the steaks and stuff like that were in there because, to your point, Victoria, people could see that. And that also, for some reason, having that little fridge right there that lit up it drew a lot of attention too. People would be like, oh, what's in there? And they could actually just stand there and kind of look at it, and then they'd reach in and grab what they wanted. So
Awesome. That's great. And so Victoria, what did you talk about what you sold at farmers markets and how maybe your transportation and setup was different than Teresa's?
Yeah, so when I started out at farmers markets, we did a lot of like spring and fall markets. So a lot more of like the bedding plants and the hanging baskets, light produce to start out. So we actually used our cattle trailer, of course, cleaned out. But that's how we would haul everything in it. And then that's what people would be able to go into to like shop per se. So that way, like we didn't really have to unload everything. It was just in the trailer. You could, pull down a hanging basket, the plants, whatever you needed. Of course, we'd put stuff on the outside as well. So it was nice because, our trailer had the like ramp so people could just go straight up. And so same thing, like just trying to be that really efficient, like not having to unload crate after crate after crate and things like that. But the trailer worked well for us because starting out, it was something that we had. We didn't have to go buy a landscaping trailer or something else to haul. So just in the beginning stages, it was very much like, okay, we don't have the money to go and buy something fancy or do it. Like we need to get there. We need to use what we have. And honestly, people loved it because a lot of our customers, I'm in an area where, we could be a half hour to like a fairly large city. So we, of course, farm in a rural area, but stepping outside of our bubble was people who had never seen a cattle trailer before. So going to these markets with that simple to us, but brand new to these people, it was like, oh, what's that? It's something different. Kind of like the cooler lighting up. Like it's just that one little thing that's like, oh, let's check that out. That's different. So we never really did the transporting of meats and things like that. By the time we got to selling meats, we knew that we were transitioning to the brick and mortar. So not a lot of experience on my end from like transporting meats back and forth. But the efficiency, 100% 10 out of 10. If you can travel with it and use whatever you're hauling to display, that's the way to go.
Yeah. So transitioning into the next question, leading up to the market and the day of the market itself, how did you both use social media to enhance your farmers market presence?
Victoria, you want to go first? You want me to?
Sure, yeah, might as well. So I always put emphasis on social media and that part of marketing towards the end of the week. So Thursday, I would start talking about kind of any bundles or specials or whatever that looked like, anything special for that weekend. I would start talking about it on Thursday. Fridays, I would do a live video, which is really scary for some people who are starting out on social media because putting your face on camera is scary, talking is scary. So it's kind of a little bit of a hurdle that a lot of farmers have, but the live videos were actually a huge success for us. And it was especially successful during COVID because people were stuck at home, and every video that I would do, I would be blown away by the amount of people that would actually watch and tune in, because I'm sitting there thinking, I don't have this free time. Like I'm scrambling. I can barely, do this video, but our customers and people buying from us did have that free time. They were sitting there waiting kind of for that update to see what we had for the weekend. So posting Thursday about what was coming for the weekend, a live video on Friday, talking about the same exact things, just actually seeing a person and talking really kind of connects with your customers on a different level. And then of course, Saturday, Sunday, actual like sales days, always reminding people of, hey, here's when we're open today. Hey, here's what we have. Here's the specials, like very much repetitive Thursday through Sunday. And then the beginning of the week for socials is just more of like your fun, random content to keep people engaged. But definitely heavy focused on kind of sales, availability, when and where people could buy Thursday through Sunday, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. And the only thing I'll add to that too is, as we kind of talk through this, is I do a lot of the FOMO thing. So on Sunday or Monday, I'll post pictures of like the empty freezer or the fact that we ran out of this one item, or something like that, because a lot of people see that and then they're like, oh, wow. So a lot of people buy from her, or a lot of people really, really like what they have. So not to scare people away necessarily that you ran out of something, but, hey, don't worry, we're restocking right now. We're busy with it, but you guys, sold us out of these 3 items or something like that. So I would really tout that a lot after the fact. And I agree with all of Victoria's points, really leading up to it. I will be perfectly honest and say, I did not realize how wonderful social media was and the impact it had until after I no longer did farmers markets and I had my storefront. And then I really started using social media a lot more before I opened my storefront, and leading up to like my grand opening and stuff like that, I used Facebook a ton. I'm still really digging into Instagram and kind of figuring that piece out and growing my audience there, but Facebook just really blew up and I used it a lot. I put the actual, events out there. I recommend doing that. So if it's kickoff to the farmers market season, actually create an event for your customers to join and say, I'm going, I can't wait, and create a lot of enthusiasm. Because when your customers do that, especially if they have public profiles on social media, their followers and their friends see that as well. They see that they're going to these events. Or if you have, a handful of people that shop from you and that are huge supporters, simply ask them to share it. Ask them to share it on their social media page. I've gotten just a ton of traction from what I call influencers, which a lot of them are just my friends or people that I've met through my business that support me. And I say, hey, in exchange for maybe 10% off, your cuts of meat when you come in, will you always share when you're at my store? Will you always share during the week when you're cooking with whatever you just bought? And then their followers and their audience sees that, and it just kind of snowballs from that standpoint. So yeah, I mean, I know that it's scary and I'm still learning a lot. There's a lot of pointers that even I've learned off of Victoria by following her in the last 6 to 8 months, but it's crucial, I think, that you utilize social media and get out there and really kind of put yourself out there a little bit, because it can just do wonders for your business.
So another kind of avenue that people can use is email marketing. So what tips do you have there to kind of create that traction for farmers market sales with your emails?
For this one, whenever I talk to farmers about this one, they're like, oh, not another thing to do. And that's always the pushback, is there's never enough time. So what I tell everyone is 1 email a week. Make one list, send 1 email a week, literally just put exactly what you're talking about on social media in email format and put it out there. Don't overthink it. Don't complicate it. Just exactly the same thing. Where can someone buy from you? What can they buy? How can they buy? What's on special? What's on sale? And this is especially important if you have multiple locations, have a farmer's market and a storefront, go to multiple markets, or doing multiple events in a week. You can share your schedule. So email marketing is another great touch point. It's just another great way to stay in touch. And if you're at this point of like, oh, not another thing to do, challenge yourself to do 1 email a week. If that's too much, start with 1 a month. Do just a monthly update. Here's our monthly schedule. And once you kind of layer into what you're already doing, it'll get easier, I promise. It's just adding those little things, but it's just another form of communication to stay in touch with your customers, especially during these slower summer months when we know things are slower because people are traveling and schedules are different and routines are different. So they need these little email reminders and social media reminders to keep showing up, because they get busy, and when they get busy, you're out of their mind. So the email marketing and social media just put you back at that forefront.
Yeah, I would agree, and continue to build that audience for the kind of the down season, right? So, when you're not at farmers markets, if that's the only outlet or, way for people to get a hold of you, how do you stay in touch with them during the winter time and keep them excited and maybe even still buying from you, right? Can you figure out a way that you can still meet? And I always used to meet people in parking lots. That's my thing. Parking lots, it seemed like always, in the night, and people would be questioning what we were doing. But keeping them informed. And I'll say that, email has been really hard for me, and it seems to always have been that thing that just kind of kept getting pushed down the list of important things. And to Victoria's point, I would agree, it's huge. Whenever I send an email out, I get people that come in the store and they're like, I saw your email. Or if I haven't sent one out for a little while, I'll have people come in and say, I haven't seen an email lately. Is there one? Do you have any deals going on? And so they're almost looking for it, and it's not a bombarding them, and they like that, right? It's, again, to Victoria's point, it's just kind of a gentle reminder of, I'm here, here's what we got going on. And one thing that I'll recommend that I admittedly did was I hired somebody to set up all of that for me, because I knew I didn't have time, but I knew it was important. And so dropping, $100, maybe even $200 on a marketing expert that could at least get the foundation set for me. So get the whole system set up, and get kind of I don't know what I want to say, like the form set up on, for the email. And then that way for you, it's just a quick, easy plug and play every month, but somebody's kind of done all the work to at least get you started and get you going. And there's a lot of really great local marketing places that will do just those 1 or 2 odd jobs for you. You don't have to pay them to do all your marketing. It can be, hey, I just need help with setting up my website, or getting my website kind of cleaned up, or getting my email, marketing list off the ground. I also rely a lot on Chop Local. I use Chop Local to sell all of my meat. And so they send out emails, and that works great for me, because I tell people to not only sign up for their email because they get a discount on their first order, but then Chop Local is kind of that person that helps to keep my customers a little bit informed of what's going on online, and I don't have to do it. So that's been really great with using Chop Local as well. Is just the fact that they send out newsletters a lot more frequently than I do. So
Yeah, so a few things here, kind of like Teresa mentioned, at Chop Local, we can help you with those marketing needs that you might have. If it's just one more thing that, I don't know, you just don't have time for, we are here to help you with that. Another thing, well, and I will mention this question that came in here. So what email format do you recommend? I'll talk a little bit from the Chop Local end, but you two both feel free to chime in if you have any other recommendations. We use MailChimp. We think it's very user friendly and compatible with a lot of things. But Victoria, do you have recommendations to use something different?
I always recommend to my farmers about, first place is to look at your POS system, like whatever you're processing credit cards with, start there, because you probably already have an email list and you don't even know it. And most of the time, since you're already using that company for checking out, either upgrading to their email marketing is a small fee, or it just will link better to kind of what you're selling, especially if you have an online store. So I'd say start there. And then if that's not an option for you, or you only do cash or something like that, MailChimp is what I recommend. It's free for up to, I think, 2,000 people in your email list. So you can live in that realm for free for a while. Just knowing that if you ever do cross that threshold of getting more than 2,000 people in your list, you'll have to upgrade and pay for a paid plan, whatever that is per month. But starting out, especially small scale, is a really good way to go.
Yeah, for sure.
I would agree with that. And I think, just to emphasize the point that she made, your point of sale system, you probably don't realize that you actually have a decent amount of contacts already, email addresses, that you can literally just push an email out to all those customers, because when they swipe their card and use their card, a lot of that times it's storing it in there, or if they've chosen to give you their email address, it's already in your system. So you've probably already got a great book of business in there that you can start to contact and reach out to. And then I agree, MailChimp, I kind of go back and forth between the two. My point of sale system that already has it kind of all in there, and I've dabbled a little bit in MailChimp. So I kind of use both depending on my mood or how I'm feeling, but both very user friendly. So
perfect. Okay, we'll jump into the next question here. So again, this is kind of all tying together. How did you guys, either of you, use an online store when you were at farmers markets? And now, how can farmers use their online store to boost farmers market sales, whether that be pre-orders or orders in the off season? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I did not I used a little bit of an online store, so it was my own. I set it up through, I used Square when I first did the farmers market. And so I had kind of an online store set up through them. Um, at the time it worked. It wasn't very fancy. I didn't put a ton of time into it. And so I did a little bit of work there as far as, people being able to order, but it really didn't take off, and I didn't really push it a lot, admittedly, because I wasn't comfortable with how it was set up. And so I was like, I kind of want you to shop there, but I don't really want you to shop there. That doesn't look nice. But I would have, honestly, I'd have a lot of customers that just would reach out to me, call me. A lot of people still, I mean, they had my phone number, so they'd text me or something like that. And they'd be like, hey, I'll be at the market on Saturday. Can you bring me X, Y, and Z? Or, hey, I know you're not at market this weekend, or maybe it's December and there isn't a farmer's market, but I'm low on ground beef. Can we meet up? And I'd literally just take orders that way. They'd message me, email me, text me, call me, whatever it was. I will say that now having the online store, especially through Shop Local, and I was one that drug my feet for an entire year with Katie, and Mark following up with me with Shop Local, and I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't do it because I had my own store and I had it all figured out, right? And I finally did transition to Shop Local for a variety of reasons, but it has been an amazing extension of my store. So I will say, if you can put forth the effort to get an online store set up, it will help your business tremendously. So I have a lot of customers, even with my brick and mortar here, where they can come in and shop. They love the fact that they can just do it online quick at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and swing in the morning and pick up their order, and it's ready to go. And then of course we ship nationwide as well too. But the online store, I think, is just crucial. If I could go back to the farmers market days and know then what I know now, I think I would have been 10 times more successful with the tools and the resources that I have now. So I highly recommend having an online store. Obviously Shop Local is fantastic, and they do all the work for you, so it's really great. You don't really have to do a whole lot there. So I would highly recommend definitely getting an online store going. So.
Now, Teresa, this might be a little bit off topic question, but if someone is thinking about starting an online store, was there a certain volume where you were like, okay, I have 3 steers in the freezer, I'm ready to ship online? Was there a recommended, or what do you recommend that someone should have on hand to be prepared to go into setting up an online store?
I think you can do it with anything, right? Any amount. And that's kind of how mine was. I kind of said, okay, I'm going to start off small, because I not only did I not have a ton of products, but it was scary for me, right? It was a big jump and I didn't really know how to manage it. So I was like, I'm not going to throw everything online and then fall flat on my face. I'm just going to put maybe a handful of my top sellers on there and get going with that, and really get people started to use it and get myself used to using the online store. And then grow it that way. I did the same thing with Shop Local too. I started off with just a small amount of product on there. And then as I became more comfortable and, with the encouragement of the team there, it was, hey, we know you've got more stuff in your store. Let's help you add it onto here and really grow that. And so then it kind of grew into everything that I have here in the store. About 95% of it is all online too, and people can access it. So I don't think you need to have, I would say just start wherever you got it. If you want to pop an online store and just put 4 or 5 things on there, I'd say go for it and get yourself going. And then you can always add to it later. So.
Cool. Awesome. That's just what came to mind. And Sydney, I guess this would be a question for you, just as we're on this topic. Have you seen that farmers are turning to online stores more since COVID? Post-COVID, they're like, all right, online's a thing. We got to compete with the local grocery stores. Have you seen a bigger influx since then?
Yeah. And Katie, if you want to jump in here too, you can. I would say we definitely have, and we're actually doing a survey right now. And I certainly think the trends are going towards that. So just finding a way to differentiate yourself, making sure you have inventory in stock, being on top of those kind of things once you have an online store is really important. And I think, I don't know, I almost think it's something you have to have at this point just to stay in the game. So if you want to add anything else, Katie, you can, but that's kind of my quick plug there.
No, I think you're completely right. And what we've seen, especially since the pandemic, is that people are so much more familiar with online shopping. And even for things like produce and meat that maybe before the pandemic, they were buying some of their shelf stable goods online, but they were a little bit more nervous about that. Those things that they like to pick out at the store themselves or look at themselves, but they become so much more comfortable with that. And along with that, our e-commerce platforms have had to evolve to give them the type of shopping experience that they're used to on, I do a lot of clothes shopping online or things for my kids. And so people want that same type of experience that they're used to having from other major online retailers. And that's something to keep in mind. They want product description pages. We're getting off topic here a little bit, aren't we? But they want product description pages that really show them about the product, maybe multiple photos, maybe ideas on how to use the product. They want to know their shipping cost up front. That's really important if you are going to ship, or what the pickup options are. We could do a whole nother webinar on this topic, but I'll stop there.
All right. So to kind of get off the online store thing, and if people have more questions about that, we can certainly expand a little bit later, but to kind of go into a marketing type of discussion here, Victoria, you've mentioned, you kind of branded your farmers market booth. So what are some maybe inexpensive ideas? I know we're just in the middle of the season. So at this point, what are some inexpensive ideas that you have for branding and really drawing attention to your booth?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a tough one because, a lot of times when you go to your farmer's market, there's multiple people selling the same things. So what I love to recommend people is picture frames. That's one of my favorite go-tos. It's so simple, but it allows you to put your price sheet in a picture frame and pop it up. Then that way it's not blowing in the wind, or if it's a rainy market, the paper isn't curled up. And it also gives that kind of look of what you're going for. So you can use a rustic wood picture frame and just adds to that farm feel of your booth. If you sell eggs and don't have the refrigerator option, bring a couple empty egg cartons and stack them up and put a sign in front of them that says eggs for sale, so that people can actually see what you have for sale, even if it has to be refrigerated. And same thing, if you sell milk, bring one of your milk jugs with water in it and sit it on your table if you can't display it. Kind of find a workaround, use things that are already on your farm, in your circle, that can still show what your product is without it having to be refrigerated or kept in coolers, things like that. So those are a few of my favorite things.
Yeah, Teresa, anything to add here?
What kept coming to mind was I have this beautiful black cowhide that I use on my table, and for some reason, as kind of weird as that might be, it just draws a lot of attention. It's really pretty. And then I've had some people be like, "Oh, I want to buy one of those." So that's worked out really well. But I will say I've also found that, and this is kind of a new find for me, but I use staples for a lot of my print items. I will echo everything that Victoria said. I think the frames and all that kind of stuff is fantastic. However, you can kind of make it feel homey and kind of give them some, kind of a little bit of what your life is like on the farm a little bit. But Staples is amazing if you've got access to one, to not only quickly print out really nice color, even 8x10. So if you want to put, change out your frames or have a nice list of maybe your items and you want it on something like that, and they're like 70 cents and they do same day stuff, and it's perfect. You can do it all on your computer and literally submit it to staples.com. I'm kind of touting Staples here a little bit, but I also have used them to make my big A-frame sign, my big cardboard sign. You can have them print you those big, huge cardboard pieces that go inside of those A-frames. And I'm talking like the big ones that actually stand up on the ground. And you can have them print those. So if you wanted to swap out your menu a couple times a season or something like that, you can have them do that and print those out for you. They look really, really sharp, very clean and crisp, and it's easy for people to read them. And then if you're ever sold out of something, I just have little sold out signs printed that I just keep in with me when I travel with the farmers market. And then if I sell out of something, I just slap that on there so people can still see that I have the item or that it's something I usually carry, but I just happen to be sold out that day. So it's super easy to kind of use that way, but and also it's not very expensive at all to print those out. So I'd recommend that, using some of your local resources if you can, printing facilities that do stuff like that, just to make things look a little bit more crisp and clear for your customers to read.
Yeah,
Great.
I love that. Oh, sorry, Sydney. Yeah,
No, go
I
ahead.
think there's a part of there's a place for handwritten tags to give that homey feel, but there's also a place for the printed and the more professional look as well. So it's a very fine line, and it comes back to like the feel, I guess, you want for your business. But if you're going for that sophisticated, professional, like we have it together look, I love the idea of printing, because then you're not scrambling with, you know, your chalk markers or whatever the morning of. So yeah, definitely gives that this booth knows what they're doing look to it.
Yeah. Sorry, my slides were getting a little bit ahead of me here. So going on to the next one, I know it might be a little bit late in the season to discuss this, but looking towards the future, when you're thinking about what market you want to attend, and maybe Teresa, you can talk to this, what considerations should you keep in mind when you're deciding which farmers market is right for you to attend, and, you know, just thinking about how they can support you and if it's a good fit?
Yeah. This is a good question, and I feel like I sometimes have a hard time answering it. I'll use an example. So I obviously got started at the Des Moines Farmers Market, and I was super excited about it because it's like the third largest farmers market in the United States, right? So I was like, jackpot. Like, this is going to be awesome. And it was awesome. So this is absolutely nothing against the Des Moines Farmers Market, but the idea that it was a huge market and they draw in such a huge crowd, and I'm talking like tens of thousands of people, it, from a sales standpoint, it really wasn't huge for me. And I can say that confidently because I'm now part of the Ankeny Farmers Market, which is like a third of the size of the Des Moines Farmers Market. And I have higher sales here at the Ankeny Farmers Market than I did the Des Moines. So I think that that's maybe something to just keep in mind, that just because it's a big popular market doesn't always mean that it's going to be successful for you. I think that you make it successful. But I also think just maybe looking at, you know, when you go to the market, look at the excitement that's around it. Look at maybe what that market does as far as really getting it out there on social media and helping to promote your business, or at least to promote the market itself. I found that that's really huge. You know, I think the Ankeny Farmers Market does really well with that. The Des Moines Farmers Market did really well with that during the pandemic, when they were pushing all of their thousands of followers to all of our pages for people to shop online and to still help support us and be able to access us. I saw a huge boost in business when I wasn't even showing up for the big Des Moines Farmers Market. So I think it's hard to say, you know, that there's really maybe something that you should be looking for, but I think keep in mind that it's not necessarily the size of the market. It's, you know, look at how are they supporting, what does their social media look like, right? How are they supporting all of their vendors that are showing up every day and paying the money to be there? Look at, you know, maybe go talk to some of the other vendors. What do you guys like and not like about this market? And kind of talk through it that way. And then also just go into it with the idea of knowing that it also is what you make it. You know, use your social media platform to drive people there, to direct people to where you're at. I love to share other vendors that are at markets that I'm at, and then they share it to their page. And I do it because I also look at it like, if we're not all successful, none of us are going to be successful at that market. So it's how can you really work and get the excitement going, to showcase everybody else that's at that market, not just you, when you're kind of figuring out, you know, which ones you want to be a part of, and do a couple of them and maybe do them well. I have never been one that likes to do multiple farmers markets, mostly just because my sanity and my brain can't handle it. But, you know, I know some people that just like to just spread themselves really thin and do as many markets as possible. And that doesn't always equate to being successful. I think just, you know, picking a couple of them and doing them really well and kind of honing in what your setup looks like and how you really get people there for you. And then maybe start to grow out a little bit more. So that's probably a really long-winded answer to that question. But I feel like it's kind of a hard one to answer because there's multiple ways to look at it. And it's a tough decision, right? And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Don't do it next year. You know, if that's the case, you can always get into it and be maybe an occasional market vendor, test out the waters a little bit and see if you like it. And if you don't, that's okay. Just, you know, go and move on to a different one.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that as well. Kind of same thing, knowing that like where we're at in the year, if you're considering a different market or something new for next year, go visit that market now. I think being able to feel the vibe and see the people and stuff there in person will be able to tell you, all right, this is worth it. This is worth my time. Oh, maybe not. Maybe their social media makes them look great, but they only had 20 people. So go take that time, take that morning and check it out for yourself. See it in person. And then the other thing that I always recommend is make sure that it's really going to work for you. And what I mean by that is, are you going to make that commute every week? Are you going to commit to showing up? Sometimes we'll look at these big, huge markets and be like, oh, I'm going to travel that hour and a half because they're the biggest farmers market around. And then you get a month in and you're like, man, I'm tired. I don't like this drive anymore. I don't want to do it. And then what happens? You flake out. So be real with yourself and be like, am I seriously committing to this? Because I see a lot of farms fall flat just because we're excited at the beginning of the season and then we get tired and we lose steam, or it's not going as great as we wanted it to go. So then we stop showing up, and that doesn't do anybody any good, big picture.
Yeah, I think those are some great things to consider and really great points. So the next question, and this is really by far like the most frequently asked question that we got in the registrations, is how can I stand out among vendors who are selling similar products as me? And I know, Victoria, you kind of have a story about how you made your booth stand out with this ice chicken story. So maybe share a little bit about that, and then other ideas to help make your booth unique and attractive to customers.
Yeah, so the ice chicken, our farm signed up for it was like a winter event. It was an ice festival. So you paid your vendor fee, you got to set up, sell whatever you wanted to sell. But with your vendor fee, you also got an ice sculpture. This company carved it for you. You sent them a picture. This is what I want it to look like. So literally when you showed up to this event that day, you got your table and your ice sculpture, which was really cool. So we actually did an ice chicken because we were promoting our chicken CSA. And it turned out that the kids loved it because they were like, oh my gosh, a chicken. And it was like kid height. Like it was only probably like 2.5, 3 feet tall. So they were all for it. So everyone ended up, taking pictures of their kids with this ice chicken. And then they would tag us online, which was super cool. So then the other thing we did that day, we did a giveaway, like us on Facebook and get this free grab bag. Now in this bag, it was literally like a craft brown paper lunch bag, and it had a teeny tiny single, like one slice of bread, jam, very tiny, and a pamphlet about our farm. So they would come up to our table, pull up their phone, show us that they liked us on Facebook. They got this bag. Now they didn't know what was in the bag, but it was just the idea that they got something for free from us just for liking us on Facebook. So simple, but such a huge influx of people from this one event. And like Teresa was saying earlier, it snowballs. It's kind of like a spider web effect. Once one of your friends likes your page, then their friends see it, then their friends see it. So that's really what happened. And that really kind of skyrocketed our social media presence just because someone was able to get a free mini jam. 100% worth it 10 times over. Now I know your farmer's market, not everyone's going to have an ice chicken, right? So looking at things that you can do differently. Can you do a giveaway of something like that? Can you sample a product? Can you, sample a different flavor of cheese every week, or beef sticks, whatever that looks like? If you have something for someone, I think it'll be a good way to kind of encourage people to be like, okay, what are they sampling this week? Okay, what can I get this week? It has to be about your customer and not necessarily about you. And that's the hardest shift. That's the hardest piece to figure out. How will your customer benefit from coming to your table that week?
Yeah, I would agree with all of those. And I think it's hard to really pinpoint that. And it's so easy. I'm in this process right now of, as soon as somebody else pops up doing something similar to you, you panic, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to, win this battle. I have to come out ahead. How do I set myself apart? How dare they come into my market? That's what I'm experiencing right now. Like, how dare you? But it's hard to kind of stay true to yourself. And I think that you've got to remind yourself of, you're doing a really great thing. Stick to who you are. Don't try to change everything up just because they're doing something a little different. If they've got maybe some ideas that you're like, oh my gosh, that's a really great idea that they did that. Then maybe take some of that, right? And take it back and say, how can I incorporate that? But I think don't feel like you have to change everything just because somebody else is doing something similar to you. I always maintain there's plenty of mouths to feed. So to Victoria's point, like, how do you maybe just set yourself apart a little bit, or maybe draw more attention to yourself? The samples are huge for us. We usually do like beef stick samples and jerky samples, something super easy. Toothpicks, people just pick them out, but there's usually a line of people wanting to get their samples that morning. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, they buy something, right? Or at least it draws them to your table, and then they start looking at your menu, and you can give them information. You can just kind of start talking to them. The other idea to kind of throw out there from a sample standpoint, we have done like crock pots full of, like we did a shredded beef. So, if we're talking kind of an audience of meat lovers here, meat sellers here, we just did a brisket tip, and a super simple recipe, shredded it up in a crock pot and had it there, just was handing it out in little containers. And people loved it. I mean, just went crazy over it. And it was a super simple, didn't take long to throw it together, easy to have in a crock pot and to keep it warm right there. But we like to do those a lot of times, even in the store on the weekends, because it just draws in a lot of extra people and they get super excited. And then they either buy the product, or I've had people come back, the next week and be like, hey, that was really good, and I'd love to try some of that, or they'll order it online after the fact. So yeah, the sample thing is huge for us specifically. So
Yeah, I think those are some great ideas. And did you ever like give out recipe cards in those types of situations, or, give recipe ideas for your customers?
yeah, that's a great point. So we would print out the recipe on like an 8x10, put it in a framed thing and put it next to the sample so people could take a picture of it. And then we'd also, like, if we ever do bundles, sometimes we include the recipe card in there, and then we'll post it to our social media page too, multiple times. Especially leading up to it, we'll be like, hey, we've got samples this week, this weekend, here's the recipe, come in and try it, screenshot this recipe or save it. And then if you like it, you can, get the products you need to actually make it, and then do it that way. So yeah, that's a great point. I didn't mention that, but the recipe is huge. And especially if it's a super simple recipe, people like very simple, easy things. I know I do. And so I like to stick to that as much as possible. Of this, it's a chunk of meat and maybe 2 ingredients that you probably have in your counter or in your pantry, and throw it all together, and there you go. So
Perfect. So talk a little bit about finding new customers at these markets. I know that kind of relates to, standing out and attracting people, but is there any other advice that you have about getting new customers to your booth?
That's a good one. I I think the sample thing is huge for us because it just attracts more people. But I've gone out before when I've had somebody there with me. I've like actually stepped out into the crowd and walked amongst the crowd and handed out like either my card or like $1 off. On the back of my card, it'll be $1 off, and it'll be, hey, go visit us. We're at Third and Court, or whatever it is. Here's $1 off for your purchase today, and we've got some great samples. So I'll like actually go out and kind of market myself a little bit and walk around if you have capacity to do that. Or even send, have a friend that shows up at the market, and say, hey, for a package of ribeyes, will you go walk around for a while and hand out these cards and tell people about us? I think farmers markets, for me, being a vendor especially, I always noticed when people were walking around with like either the same thing in their hand, or like there were some booths that always gave out stickers and said, like, for some reason it sticks in my head, there was one that you ate crickets, and people had a sticker that said, I ate a cricket. And so when I was the first vendor there, I was like, what are these people eating here? Like, what what have I gotten myself into? But everybody had a cricket sticker, and it was like the cool thing, because then people started to ask and say, where'd you get that? Or what do you mean you ate a cricket? And they would, they were promoting themselves by just putting a sticker on someone's shirt when they had a sample at their booth, right? So something like that I think is really great too, of how can you make sure they walk away with something that people are going to be noticing, and they're going to want to know where they got that from. Even if it's a specific bag, I've put forth in a little bit of extra money into having specific bags with my stamp on it, versus just a plastic bag. Because then I stand out, right? It's not just a plastic bag that who knows what's in there. It's a West 40 bag with the big label and everything on the front of it that people can kind of see. So those are just some of my ideas, at least from past experiences.
Yeah, those are a lot of really good ideas for in person. And I think what I like to remind a lot of farmers is that, it's not the farmer's market responsibility to get people to your table. So that's where your own marketing comes into play. So I know I'm a huge social media fan. I've just seen huge results from it. And I know that it really is such a great way to kind of introduce yourself to new people online. So really getting people to your booth starts even before you set up. So turning to the online world and figuring out how and where you can connect with customers there is a big part of it too.
Awesome. So the next question.
I'll add to yours as well, or I have a question. Sorry, Sydney.
No, go ahead.
I would assume when you post and stuff like that, you're always tagging like the market and tagging people in it, right? So that they can see that and then they're sharing it to their page. I think I found a lot of success with that too, of just, if I'm talking about the market or talking about a product I'm going to be having and it's not mine, I'll tag other people. Or like if I post about shopping online, I'll tag Shop Local and Shop Local shares it on their page, so I would assume that you do the same thing and you've probably seen success with that too, but I think that's important to tag the people that are involved in whatever you're doing so that they can see it and share it too.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And even if you don't have those tag connections, if your farmer's market doesn't have a page or you're not collaborating with anyone, still tag and check in at like your location. Doesn't have to be like your exact address, but even just your town or your state. And that'll start allowing you to reach kind of your local audience if you're trying to stay within one area and not go online. So if you're like, oh, I don't have anyone to tag or work with, one, think about that. But two, at least at the minimum, do your location, because that's how you're going to start finding your local people instead of, the big wide world of the internet.
So our next question is kind of the opposite of this. What are ideas for retaining those repeat customers? Like, how do you encourage people to keep coming back to you and making purchases?
Yeah, I think I've found, I recently implemented a punch card system, a loyalty card, which people have been loving. So that's kind of a little bit later on in the game. I would recommend doing that earlier. Again, I'm learning as I go here, and there's definitely things I do. So I think that's been really huge for me so far. My loyal customers that continue to come back love it. Like they're just really, really thankful, and it's really not that much, right? But just the idea that I'm acknowledging the fact that they continue to shop with me has been huge for them, and they really appreciate that. If I've got regulars too, I'll throw in stuff every once in a while. I'll run specials or something like that, just to kind of do something special for them specifically. I will say that, for me early on, especially with the farmers market, I did a lot of deliveries and I did them for free. You don't necessarily, I'm not saying that you have to do that, but I think that went a long ways with my customers that I started to meet at the farmers markets. I would offer them that. I'd say, hey, if you need me on Tuesday, Wednesday, and the market's not until Saturday, I can just drop it off to you. Don't worry. I can bring it to you or whatever the case is. And I offered that service year round. So especially in the wintertime, I not only kept connected with them, through the email, the newsletters and stuff like that, but I had their phone numbers and I had their contact, and I would actually reach out to them and say, hey, Shelly, it's been a while, just wanted to check in on your meat supply. Everything good? Do you need anything? And honestly, almost every single time they'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, I was thinking about you and I need X, Y, and Z. And so I think as far as like retaining them, I really put a lot of effort in building a relationship with them. Talking with them, getting to know their kids when they stop by the booth, and remembering that they had an event last week and asking them how that event was. And I will say that it might sound silly, but that's just gone a long ways with my customers. And they are now ones that drive 30 minutes to get to my brick and mortar store. And I met them 6-7 years ago at the farmer's market, but we've built such a relationship, and they almost appreciate what I'm doing, which seems kind of crazy, but to the point where they're willing to go out of their way to continue to support me. And so that for me, like just this, I guess maybe the simple customer service has been huge for my business, and always being very consistent with that, very, very caring, very into my customers, listening to them, doing special orders, right? If they want a special cut, I'll go and get it and I'll find it for them. That's been really big for retaining that base. And then they just share it with everybody, right? So it's just that snowball effect that we've talked about many times of, they're all about, oh my gosh, Teresa's great, and the product's great. And then, they start telling their friends, and it just kind of goes from there. So
Yeah, a lot of that is so true. It really is about the relationship. Like people really want to know you as their farmer, and they want to know about you as a person too. Like it's not just about like, okay, I go here because they have good steak, right? Like yes, you need a quality product because you're charging a premium price, but that's also going to be what makes you different from the other vendors. Like people want to know who you are as a person and how they can relate to you as a person. Is it that you both have kids, or you went to the same high school, or whatever that is? And those things come out from that conversation and that customer service. So if you have, like, say you pay someone to do your farmers markets, make sure this is a person that's really going to serve your customers well, because it's so easy to say, oh, Susie just graduated high school and she wants to do our farmers markets. But if Susie's afraid to talk to people, it's going to be really hard to build that connection and that community. So knowing that whether it's you at the face of your market or whoever you're paying to do it, that customer service really is a big deal. People want to know you as a farmer and you as a person, not just what you sell.
Yeah.
Great. We'll keep moving through them here. I know we're getting a little bit closer to 11, but we'll keep going. So one of another really commonly asked question, and I know, Teresa, you talked about your grab and go cooler where people can kind of see the products, but are there any suggestions you have on making your display attractive when you can't see the products, or they're in coolers, or any other ideas related to marketing these frozen products?
Yeah, I've put pictures out. I used to have kind of a lookbook or a little flip book when I first started that had pictures of the actual product, so that people could see it from there. And like I said, I would vacuum seal like the steaks in the summertime so people could still see those. I also would, literally just get my phone out if somebody asked a question or, said, well, what about this roast or what about this cut? I'd be like, let me show you a picture that a customer took the other day and sent to me. And I had an album literally on my phone, and I'd show them my phone, right? I'd be like, here, look through these pictures of this, that so-and-so, just cooked up a couple days ago. So, I think that that's helpful. Definitely having some pictures out is good. Being able to vacuum seal as much as you can. The beef sticks I would also set out, and I had kind of I don't know how to really to explain it, but I had kind of a cooler system or an ice bucket, and then a piece that would sit down on top so they were kind of down in the ice. They would stay nice and cool, but they were right there on the table. So I had the samples, and then I literally had the beef sticks right there next to it in the jerky, so people could try the sample and be like, that's really good, and literally just grab the package of sticks right there. So I think as much as you can, while being careful and following all the rules, of having it out for them to just be able to grab or to see for themselves is really important, versus just in coolers or in your freezer. I loved Victoria's idea about the eggs, right? Use an empty egg carton, or I don't know, maybe just sacrifice 1 dozen eggs, or maybe not wash them quite that well and let them sit out, but not have that one that you sell, but leave that sitting out so they can just still see the product. I think that's a really good idea too. So it's hard when you're dealing with meat. But I will say that if you can find something that people will just try. So even like the beef sticks, if they love them, they're going to come back, and then they're going to be more comfortable trying something else. I use, this is probably maybe a little bit off topic here, but I use my ground beef as my carrot that I dangle out in front of everybody. My ground beef is super cheap and it's amazingly delicious. And so people love it, right? But it's that one thing they feel comfortable spending money on and trying. But as soon as they try it and they love that ground beef, they're going to come back, and then they start buying steaks, and they start buying roasts, and they start buying everything else, right? So if you can find maybe a product like that too, it's not necessarily along the display question here, but if you can find a product that maybe is just really easy to get them to buy and at least try it, I think that's really good to just at least get that out there and have them go home with something, and then they're gonna hopefully come back. So.
Yeah, and I'll add, when you set up your farmers market booth, a lot of times, add a little bit of height to your displays. So whether that's putting wood crates on your tables, or, even if your wood crates are stacked and then you have things in the wood crates, whether that's just picture frames or you can't display meat, a little bit of height really goes a long way, because as people are scanning, their eye changes and it has to slow down when it's looking at your booth, because it's not just looking at something that's just on a table. So using the wood crates, or if you have the Apple peck baskets, the round ones, anything that has that farm feel is normal to us, but people eat that stuff up. Rustic tins, wood baskets, even the pint and quart containers. People like that because then they get to take that home. So different things there. So really adding height to your display can be a game changer, just in something looking the part and giving people something to kind of look through instead of just at a flat regular table.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that tip from my farmer's market this week, and I'm going to redo my table now.
Okay, right. I know, so many ideas.
Yeah. One of the other questions we had is, how do you encourage customers to buy in bulk and maybe increase the average order value? I know I had heard somebody say that they had handouts for information about buying in bulk. So do you guys have any suggestions there?
Yeah, I think I think Victoria might have been the one that talked about the pamphlet earlier. I think that's a great idea. I will say that it can be daunting for people to buy in bulk and to understand the concept if they've never done it before. And I run into it every single day. So what I've done is I not only offer in the bulk options, when you work with the locker to actually customize the whole thing yourself, but I do smaller bulk options in store. And I will actually do, like you can see on my website, that I have like 1/8 of a beef and 1/4 of a beef already set in stone with a price attached to it. So taking the guesswork out of it for you. I'll get, here's how much money you give me, and I'll deliver it to your doorstep. That's what I offer. I'm not going to ship it because it's a lot, but but I'll kind of break it down like that. I've noticed that a lot of people just like it if you give them, just tell me what I'm going to get and tell me the price. And then if they want to swap out a couple of items, then they can. Do some substitutions, but it just takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. For them, I'll do smaller bundles as well. So I'll tell them, come in the store and give me a list of items that you want and a budget, and I'll make it happen. And I'll put the bundle together for you within the budget that you're looking for, and you'll know the exact price you're going to pay. Because sometimes when you go to the locker and you customize them that way, you can give them a range of what they can expect, but you never really know until the animal gets there and gets weighed, right? And so I've kind of gone to that route where I'll do smaller bundles, and they range anywhere from $50 to $900. But it's set in stone for you. Here's what you're going to get. Here's how much you're going to pay. And I'll also do it from a pricing standpoint that makes sense along with what you would have gotten it from the locker. So it's actually a discounted price than buying all the individual pieces in my store. It still makes sense from a profit standpoint, and it makes sense with what you would have paid if you would have gone through the locker. I'm just making it super easy for you and taking the guesswork out of it. So I think that's helpful. I've had some customers then come back then, 6 months later and say, okay, well, we want to actually customize it ourselves now. We're feeling good about what we got. We like everything we got, but maybe there's a couple changes we want to make. And it's like, perfect. Let me walk you through how you actually work with the locker to do that. And then I sell them a quarter or a half a cow or something like that to kind of fill the freezers. So that's been my experience. And that's been really, really helpful for me to kind of encourage people to buy in more in bulk and make them feel comfortable about it.
Yeah. And I think adding to that, like for some people, we have to take a step back and realize that bulk to some people might be 10 pounds. Like buying 10 pounds of meat at one time might be a lot for them, where bulk for us is like the whole cow. So it's a very different kind of perspective, but you really have to kind of put yourself in your customer's shoes and be like, all right, is this an older couple that maybe only uses 2 pounds of ground beef a week, and bulk for them is 10 pounds or whatever? Kind of going off of what Teresa said, I've had success with doing half hogs. We did a half hog set price. It was a whole list, and really the only thing they got to customize was the types of sausage that they picked out. So they knew they would get 10 packs of bacon, 2 packs of ribs, whatever that case looked like. So then when they came in and they were like, I want to buy the half hog, I'm like, great, you need 10 packs of sausage, go pick out whatever flavors you want. Very straightforward, very easy to understand. No, okay, it might be this price because we have to weigh it. It just, there's definitely a learning and an education gap between people who I think are buying retail cuts and buying in bulk. So if you want to encourage it, you can collect emails and have an email list specifically with like information on bulk buying. Things like that. You can have somewhere on your website of like, here's how to bulk buy, frequently asked questions. So if someone is interested, you're not spending an hour trying to break it all down for them, because there's a lot of education that comes with bulk buying. So just kind of thinking either how to simplify it by doing a set price, set item, or how to easily provide that information, so that way people truly understand what they're getting into when they are buying in bulk.
Perfect. So that was kind of all the pre-submitted questions that we had there. I know one of the questions we had in here, and we're kind of running out of time, but I'll bring this up. Teresa, if you wouldn't mind sharing, somebody asked, what was the brand, if you remember, of that glass fridge that you had? Some people are kind of interested in that. And so if you have any insight into where you found that or what you were looking for, go ahead and share that.
I don't remember the brand, but I will say the website that I get most of my freezers, refrigerators from is Katom. I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. It's Katom. And I order them online and they just get shipped to my front door. They have a lot of different brands. I mean, it was probably a little bit of an off brand, to be honest with you. I've never been one that has bought freezers that are brand name and spent a lot of money. And if I did buy brand name, they were well used. And by well used, I mean like 7 or 8 years old. So I do not pump a lot of money into that part of my business. I try to be really strategic. Just because it's a brand name doesn't mean it's the best thing out there. So, but I will say, if you can find a local business, a welding business, what I did with these freezers, and I would be happy to send pictures to Sydney and Katie at Chop Local, and they can maybe send it out to the people that are on this if you guys want more information, or you're welcome to reach out to me as well. There's my info on there. But I had them put, basically build a base for these freezers and this refrigerator, and then weld wheels on the bottom. And so it was all one structure. So that refrigerator and that freezer literally wheeled up onto my van and right off of my van. And then I could lock the wheels so it didn't move around while it was on display at the market, and then wheel it right back up there. So that was super easy. There was no lifting. Obviously I was a one-woman show, and so that wouldn't have been feasible. So yeah, I don't remember the brand name, but that ktom.com website is fantastic for ordering freezers, refrigerators of all different sizes, shapes. Honestly, if you can get out there on Marketplace or even find a local auction site, there's a couple here in Iowa. I'd be happy to send if you're in Iowa, that I watch for auctions. You know, when restaurants shut down and stuff like that, they auction all that stuff off, all those freezers, refrigerators and stuff like that. And you can usually get some pretty good deals on some of those things. So that would be my recommendation.
I have a random freezer that I absolutely loved. It was actually by Sheets, and you could only get it like when a Sheets closed down, but it was a 2-tier freezer on wheels. It was made for ice cream. So it even had the little like caddy dividers. Oh my gosh, loved it. I'll have to try to find a picture for you, but I love those things. I like looked for over the internet to find them forever, and I ended up getting 3 and lined them on a wall, and just to have little baskets of every single type of meat. And it was 2-tier, not like those big flat chest freezers, because you lose so much space in the bottom. That little freezer, loved that thing. Couldn't tell you what the brand was. It was a Sheets ice cream freezer, and you couldn't really buy it. I think it was patented by Sheets, so you have to like find it when a Sheets or something is closing down. Completely random, but I swear by those freezers, and they're on wheels too. So yeah, those random finds really make such a difference.
Yep.
So I know we're running out of time here, but just to wrap things up before we close it out, would each of you just mind sharing the 3 most important things that you would share with somebody for farmers market success?
Only 3? We'll be here for another hour, I feel like. You know, I think it's for me, I would go with just the social media, which I know this is probably on Victoria's list too. The social media is huge, especially looking back. I would have done so much more social media when I did the farmers market when I first started. So that would be the first key to success, maybe. You know, connect with your customers, really get in there, get to know them, build relationships to keep them kind of coming back. I think that was huge for me. And the third is just to be open and willing to evolve. Know that the first day when you set up is not going to be exactly what that setup looks like, even maybe 4 or 5 weeks into the farmer's market. You're going to evolve, you're going to come up with new ideas, and that's great. And that's okay. So don't feel like you have to have it perfect on the first try. Always be looking for way other people are doing things. Walk the market and look at the way other people have stuff set up, and you're probably going to get some really great ideas, things you never thought of. So be open to that, and be willing to evolve and change as the market goes on, even halfway through right now, right? There's things you can do to implement right now that could drastically change the success of the rest of your market season, even though you're halfway through it. So I think being open to evolving is really, really important.
Oh, that's awesome. So I would say first things first, like when it comes to your marketing, be super repetitive. Like if you don't feel like you're super repetitive saying about what you have for sale, when you're open, where people can find you, then I think you need to talk about it more. So you should feel like you're being super repetitive, just because people need to hear it time and time and time again. I would also say kind of the second thing to success is to do a range of different like tactics. I come from like a marketing side of things. So like if you're on social media, instead of doing a post, try a reel, try showing up in stories, try sending an email. Different ways to connect, different ways to show up are all different ways to reach different people. So if you think that your marketing is stagnant and you've only been doing posts, well, it's time to switch it up. Try something new. And then I'd say the last thing is to try something unexpected that your customers aren't used to you doing. So if you've never done samples, give it a try, see how it goes. If you've never done a coupon code, give it to 10 of your regulars next weekend and see how many of those people come back the following week. Trying to come up with something to like surprise or be unexpected to your customers in a positive way, I think is really just kind of a cool way to, keep people on their toes and keep the excitement going, even during like when we feel like summer is just dragging on. Little things, little surprises can make a big difference.
Yeah, I think those are 6 really great things. And, to wrap it up, I hope that people have been able to take even just 1 or 2 things from this webinar that can help propel them into the second half of the season, and, continue to see success through that. So if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out to us here at Chop Local, or I know Victoria and Teresa would be happy to talk as well. So with that, thank you two so much for all of your expertise, and thanks to everyone for joining us here today. I think it's been really helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for your time. It's been a great conversation.
All right. Thanks, guys.